We are in the Unity Hub, and let's create a new project. So I'm going to create a project, and we'll keep the default for now. You have some options where it will bring in some default settings, but we'll keep it at 3D Core. And we want to name the project. We'll call this script tests. And it's going to store it in this particular project. I can select another folder to choose if I wanted to store it in a different location. The default is on your C drive. I actually changed this to a different folder on a different drive. And we'll say create project, and it's going to take a second, but it will come up. It will launch Unity. So you can create new projects from within Unity, or you can create them from the Unity Hub. And it won't take that long. It'll take a minute or two to load everything it needs to load. So here we are with our Unity project, and this is a new clean project, and it comes in with a camera and a directional light. So I'm going to add a few objects in here, and let's look at some basic scripting. So in my menu, so here we go, we have the ability to create a new scene, open a scene, save a scene, create a new project, or open a project or save a project. It does have a project structure. When you create a project, there are subfolders in this. So if we look at this project that's been created, here are the subfolders that it has a default setting for. So assets, scenes, and it starts with a sample scene. So if I go into here, I see a sample scene, which is this scene, and you can work with the settings for the default. But it does have a project structure here, so that's why you have projects and scenes. You can have multiple scenes in your project, and you will, because you'll have your start screens, your end screens, your win screens, your lose screens, other playable levels. So you'll have multiple scenes in your game project. And then here you see the settings for building and running the game to test it. Your assets folders, you have importing packages, custom packages, and so forth, game objects. The software comes with some basic game objects that you can work with, components that you can add, and windows. So for this, let's see, panels, you could change your view. I'm going to keep it at this, so you can do a game view, close off floating views. You can also change that in your layout. So we can go 4x4 split and 2x3. So this is an okay one to do, because you can actually have your scene and your game at the same time, so you can see what's happening in your scene and when you play it. I'm going to go back to the default. Below here, so here's our project folder, and this is showing us what's installed in our scene, in our folder right now, and the console, which shows a log of what's going on when there are errors in your file. So you can add these windows, open and close windows, and dock them and so forth. So let's create a game object. So I'm going to bring in a cube, and let's scale this. So we're going to make this a floor here. So notice that objects come in, and the only way that they are visible here is because they have components. So in my inspector panel, I see a list of tabs, and each one of these is a component. So the transform component contains information about the translate, rotates and scale positioning of the objects. The mesh renderer, it controls the cube, and the mesh renderer controls the visibility. If I check this off, I only see the wireframe of it. It's not rendering now. This is very useful for when you're doing collision detection, but for right now we'll keep it on. And it has materials and a collider. So these are some of the default components that come with the object. The transform component can never be deleted. It always needs to know where this item is in the world space. And you can add components, which is what we're going to do with a script, because a script is considered a component of an object. So objects do nothing until they are directed by a component, and the components can contain all kinds of information, from moving information to color information to position information. So let's name this. So if I want to name this object, I can double click or click once here, or I can name it over here. So let's call this one floor. And you can see that the name updated over here. I can also change the name of it here by highlighting and clicking in there if I wanted to. It's not showing me that it's stored here. It's stored in the scene, but you can actually export out FBXs and OBJs, store them in your scene, and then drag them into your hierarchy. So your hierarchy is showing what's in your scene view. And when you select these objects, you see the components that are connected to them. So there's my light. I can see the positioning of the light. I can see the positioning of the camera. And whenever I select the camera, it gives me a little view here of the camera's settings. So if I move this around, I can see the camera. So the camera is actually looking this way. Now the floor, I'm going to change the color of the floor. And I need to do that by a color component. So if I right click here in scenes, I can do create, and I want to select material. So I'm going to add a material to this object that's a different color than the white. So albedo is a term for color. It's a scientific term for color. And if I just click on here, I can go in and pick another color. And then I can just drag and drop on the object, or with the object selected, I can drag and drop it in here. And that will change the default color. So now I want to bring in another object. So we'll call this cube. And it brought it into a different place, so let's reset it to 0, 0, 0. So now if I hit the F key, it'll zoom me right in, and we can see that our object is set at the world space origin. It is going through the floor because my floor is actually up a little bit. And I can change my view if I want to see orthographic versions of this view, top and bottom. I can do that. So we want this to be, I don't know, somewhere in here. And then the minute I tumble, it'll go back into perspective view. So I'm going to take this cube and bring it up here. And our game view, so that's the cube. So for example, if I go in and change my view 2x3, now I can see what happens in my game view when I do something in my scene view. But I'm a little bit more comfortable working in this view. I like this view better. When I hit play, it'll default to the game view. So if I click on play, it's going to switch to the game view, and I can see what's happening. And that's my play button right there. So we want to introduce the idea of C# scripting. And we can do that, so we can create a script, a couple of different ways. So one way is if I go into my assets folder, I right click and I say create C# script. It's going to create a script and it's automatically asking me for a name. So we'll say color 1. Now this is very important because the name that we type here has to match the name in the class. And because I have this selected, it is showing me in the inspector what that actually is. So if I double click on this, it will open up that script. Now that script is not connected to the object yet, so when we create a script that way, we have to add it to the object. We can create scripts that are attached initially to the object as well, so we'll do that next. So this script, color 1, is the public class name. This is very important. If these two things do not match, you will get an error message in your script. So this is Visual Studio, and it has IntelliSense is installed, so I can use the complete word function. Control spacebar will allow me to have an autofill, which is very helpful when you're coding. So so this is default. It has some namespaces, the class name, and it has two functions, the start function and the update function. These namespaces are accessing predefined classes. So rather than you creating and writing a class for everything that you want to be done, this has already been done for you with literally thousands of classes to access. So the Unity engine has numerous classes that you can call. Start and update are two particular classes that every scene has. So the scripts by default come in with these namespaces, which are collections of classes, and these two classes, start and update. So we're going to do something very simple. So we want to use any key, and when we hit any key, we just want to see a message. So in our update, we're going to do an if statement. So if we hit a key, something happens. So if, and we want to do input. So you see, as soon as I type, because I have IntelliSense on, it's looking for an option here, and let's say dot, any key or any key down. So it's scrolling and it's telling me what I can do. So we could do mouse up. So let's look at some of the mouse ones. We could mouse up, mouse button down. So we could try some of those, but I want to do any key down. And then I need to say, well, what's going to happen when I hit any key? So I'm going to create open and close curly brackets as coding language. So this is now sectioning off this section of code. And I want to print to the log a statement. So debug debug.log. And again, so it's auto-filling in for me, and I want to say a key was pressed. And quote. And now I have to close the statement. So if you look here, it's giving you hints about your coding, and there's a little red squiggly there. It's saying an arrow, CS1002, and it's saying, telling you what's the matter with the code. There's a semicolon that's expected. So if I put in the semicolon, that goes away. And this is now my script. So what it's saying is that it's not going to do anything automatically on start, but update, and it's going to update 60 frames a second. If one of these, during one of these updates, any key is hit on my keyboard, then do this command. So let's save this script. So the script is finished, and we want to test and play it. But nothing's going to happen because the script is not attached to an object in the scene. It's just in your folder. So you can have numerous scripts that are not being used by your scenes stored in your folders. The scripts do have to be accurate, because if there's something in the script that is not correct, it won't compile and it won't play. So that's something to pay attention to. Sometimes you'll have to, if you download packages from the Unity Asset Store, sometimes they have scripts that have errors in them. You have to delete them. But in this case, so right now if I hit play and I hit any key, nothing's going to happen because it's not attached to my object. So there are 3 ways to attach a script to an object. I can left mouse click and drag on the hierarchy and it showed up on my object. I can left mouse click and drag in the scene and it'll show up on my object, and I can left mouse click and drag into the inspector. So now it's a component of the object. That means it will run on playtime. Remember, the start function runs as soon as the game starts. Anything in that start bracket will run. The update runs at 60 frames a second. So I put an if statement into the update command, and that's saying that if, so the update's waiting for that if to be launched. So if I hit any key, then it's going to do the instructions in those brackets. So if I play this and I wait, nothing will happen at startup. But if I hit a key, it'll show me a key was pressed. And it doesn't matter the key, it'll just show me. Now if you notice over here, there's an indication of every time I run this script. If this is not working, that means this button is turned off. So if that's checked off, then I can't see anything. So you want to make sure that that is pressed on. And if you want to clear your log, you hit the clear button. So let's run through that again. So if I hit play and I hit any key, it's going to run through and type out a key was pressed because that was what I put in the quotes. And it's showing me the Unity Engine debug.log object connected to this. So this script is now working. And the debug.log is a good way to test the syntax of your script. So if this runs, you know that your brackets are in the correct places, your semicolons, your quotes. A note on the quotes, if you copy and paste scripts from another source, the quote marks may be a different key command than the quote marks in Visual Studio. So if you get an error message and you're not sure why, you try and copy, put new quotes in. So highlight and put the quotes in the compiler. But let's try and add some new functionality. Let's see what we can do now with this button. So you can look at the Unity API. So if you look for docs.unity3d.com script reference, it will show you all of the tools and things that you can work with. So Unity Editor, you can look down in classes. So what are the classes that can be used? And this is what that namespace is representing. So all of the classes, which are objects, which are templates, that you can access and call in are listed in the item. And if you're not sure where to find something, you could type in. So if I type in material, it will show me the material property. So I can click on material here, and that was in the classes tab, and this will tell you all about this render material property. It gives you the variables you can add to it, and also will give you a sample script well, in most cases it will show you a sample script. Let's see if we can find material color. Material set color, so there's color here. see, materials, does it give it a script? So we're in the manual. Let's go back to the API. There we go. So material, color, let's click on the color. And here we go. So now it's giving us an example of how the code should flow. So if I go back to my script, I want to put a color on the renderer component, but I have to tell the script to find this component. So I'm going to create a variable for that. And it's doing autofill, so it's telling me what it wants to fill. And we're going to call this color me. Now I call this, this is the name, and you can name it anything you want. Just make sure that you're consistent. Sometimes people call it the same name as what it does. That's okay if you understand that, but you want to make sure that you know what your coding is doing. So you can use these comment outs to give instructions in case someone else picks up your script. So so we want to get the component for that. For the renderer. And then a semicolon at the end. And then down here, we're going to tell it what to do with that. So this needs to be the name. So that, and this is why I said you want to make sure that you're naming things so that the names go in the right place. You're not referring to the variable. So now if I say save all, two things are going to happen when I hit any key. It's going to give me a log, and it's also going to change the color of the object. So this is saved, and let's go back. Let's go into our console. Line 7. This needs a semicolon at the end. So I can tell there's something wrong with the code because it's showing me a little red line there, and it also will show me potential fixes. So if I'm looking for it, but I know that this needs a semicolon. And now this should go away. So let's play this, and let's hit any key, and it turned the box red. Now it will repeat the debug.log, but it's not going to unred the box. The box is not going to change the color. I'd have to give it some more instructions in the script. So we could do that. If we go back into the script, there were some interesting instructions on here. So this example for the color, it's going to fade the color from red to green. So each time you hit back and forth, it's going to change the color. So let's do this. So let's take these variables and let's put them below this one. And then let's take the instructions. So this is now not going to look for color me, so I'm going to comment this out for right now. And we'll comment this out, and we'll comment this out. So you see it turn green. That means it's still there. It's just the compiler is going to skip it when it looks for instructions. So this renderer rend is going to get the component, and then on update, it's going to lerp through these commands. So here, and it looks like there's no errors in the code. I don't see any red underlines. So let's save this. Let's go back. And let's see what it does now to our script. So I should still see debug.log. And now every time I hit the box, it's going to cycle through that color list. And it will do this every time I update. So it's still waiting. So it's updating 60 frames a second, but it's every time it does that, it's waiting for that if command, and it will run through it. So that is a way, the very basic way of doing a skeleton of your script, then getting the syntax down, and then testing what your functions will do, and then replacing them with more complex instructions. So instead of debug.log, it could say shoot enemy at 50 within 50 feet, or update light settings, or anything in the scene. Any object in the scene can have a script as a component that can have functionality. So the exercise would be to go in and see if you can find some other things to add to this, either add to the script or to another script. So for example, so if we want the translate, let's do translate.translate. Let's look again. Translate. No. Translate dot. Let's try transform.translate. So we want to transform this object with a translate direction. So transform.translate vector forward and time delta time, or vector up. So let's do one at a time. So now in our update, we're going to add this line of code. Or we could create another script that will do this. But in this case, I'm just going to add this in. So we're going to keep this connection here. I'm going to add this line of code in here. So now it knows that it's going to look for the transform component in your inspector. There's the transform component, and it's going to look for vector 3, which is the forward direction, and it's going to do it at time.delta time. So time.delta time is a standard amount of time, not depending on the update, which is depending on your processor. So let's change this to up, so it goes up so we can easily see it, and we'll do save all. And now let's look at the script. So it's changing the color, it's not necessarily changing the height. Let's go back to forward. Let's see which direction was forward. Let's see, REND dot. Nope, transform.translate. Let's comment this out for a second, see if anything is happening. Oh, it looks like it is moving it. It actually looks like it's moving it. So, but it's moving such small units. So let's try this. So, vector forward. Let's multiply this times 100, so it'll go 100 units, times time at delta time. So let's do save all, clear, and now it is jumping, it is moving units. You can see it's going back every time I hit it. So let's now try and get it to go in the up direction. So if we want forward, we want up. So there it goes. It's doing three things. It's printing a key was pressed from the log. It's changing the color, and it's moving up 100 units. So it happened to be moving 1 unit. So it was working. We just couldn't see it because it was such a small unit space. So that's how you build code, and we can separate each of these things out onto different scripts and combine them. So if you start to get some complex action happening in here, you want to isolate it out, you can make a new script and clean it up. You can also make use of the autocorrect to find other directions. So vector 3, up, forward. It will autofill in different places if you're looking for functionality. And certainly you want to go through the API and look at this and try this code. So it gives you the sample code, and it tells you where to put it. And as long as you know that it's looking for things. So it knows the transforms of the object that the script is attached to, unless you tell it to look for a different named object, which you have to define it as a variable. Let's try rotate. Let's try transform.rotate. So transform.rotate is the same thing. So it's not showing me an example, but I can take a guess. So if we do transform.rotate here, we'll have it translate and rotate. So let's have it do both. Transform.rotate. And in this case, we'll have it go X, Y, and Z. So we'll do 0, comma, let's do 45, comma, 0, 0, comma, 45, comma, 0. I think that should be okay. Let's see what this does. So I don't need the delta time. We may need it. Let's see what it does. So there it is. It's rotating while it's translating. So I'm building up my script and adding functionality, and I'm using the API for the resources of all of the classes that are available to me. And this is very valuable. You need to spend some time with this and understand the things that you can do that you can add into your scripts. So these classes are awesome. And if you're not sure, you can type. We've looked at the color and the transforms. You can turn things on and off. Let's see. Visibility. Let's see if there's a visibility toggle in here. So if I click on this, is there a script? Visibility.visible. Visibility.visible is probably a 1 or 0, on or off. So you can experiment with this and spend some time with these options to see what can be done and start to build your knowledge of how scripting works.